Hello out there, good afternoon. Well, welcome to a new year for the City Club, and of course an election year, as you all know. I'm Russ Beaton, City Club President. You're stuck with me again this year, but it wasn't an applause line in my opinion. I'd like to make a few announcements before we turn it over to Bill Mainwaring and get into our program for the day. Thanks to our greeters, to Spire Management for our registration, to our food service, and to you, a wonderful crowd out there. I'd like to acknowledge our supporting partners for this year, Marion County Earthwise and Virtual Peak Golden Funeral Home. And special thanks to all our business patrons that are listed in your program. Our main announcement I want to make is that the board this summer worked over the bylaws for the Salem City Club. You will all be receiving them via email. I know you're going to read every word, and we will vote on them next time as accepting the new bylaws, but we have a pretty crowded agenda for today. Again, welcome to a new year with a lot of political implications, and really appreciative of our guests here today, Congressman Schrader, and 3 people who will hope to be in his position in 2 years, right here, when the Salem City Club in 2014 sponsors a debate for District 5, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but you're all invited for that event. At this point, I'd like to introduce our moderator-in-chief, Bill Mainwaring, who will ensure that the history of Salem City Club, providing civil, interesting, bipartisan forums for this community will be the case here today. And so, Bill Mainwaring, former chairman, president of Salem City Club, longtime board member, and former publisher of the Statesman Journal. I'll turn it over to his capable hands. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Russ. Well, as Russ indicated, this is the kickoff of election season at Salem City Club with the first of 5 debates or forums involving candidates or ballot measures facing us in November. We're focusing today upon Congress, specifically upon our 5th Congressional District voice in the U.S. House of Representatives. When you received your program newsletter a couple of weeks ago, we only had 3 candidates, but we're blessed with 4 today. Our bylaws provide that those who are nominated by a legally recognized major or minor political party are invited to participate in our debates. And unfortunately, we had to go to press on the program before the final moment to file. And so we have 4 candidates today. I'll share a kind of a trade secret with the program committee. We have a standard debate for 2-party races or ballot measures. We use that all the time. We have one on file for 3-party races that we use when we have to, when there are 3. And then deep in computer memory somewhere, there was one for what you do when you have 4. And I don't know if we've ever used it before, but we're trying it out today. We appreciate all of you being here and helping us do that. We've had a lottery drawing to determine speaking order. And let me see if I can thumb through my papers here to tell you the order they're going to make their opening statements. So no more. And incidentally, I should say that with 4 candidates that have the 4-candidate format, we have to slice up our hour of television time quite a bit. And so we're putting more pressure than ever on them to be concise. And The opening statements have been reduced to 3 minutes each. Tell us about the state of the world and their candidacy in 3 minutes. The first candidate to speak to us will be Fred Thompson. He's of Salem, a small business owner, and he's the Republican nominee for this seat. He has degrees from Pepperdine University. You might just wait a moment, I'm going to introduce all 4 of them. He has degrees from Pepperdine University and Linfield College and 35 years of experience in business, including work as an electrician, a millwright, and insurance sales, and as CEO of a manufacturing plant. He ran in the Republican primary for this office 2 years ago. Our second speaker is Raymond Baldwin. He's the nominee of the Constitution Party. He's a general contractor from Canby. Before becoming a contractor, he's worked in a plywood mill, a sheet metal plant, and as a union carpenter for 10 years. I think a lot of us could identify with the way he filled out the form when the state asked for prior government experience. He answered, quote, taxpayer, jury duty, voter. Our third candidate is the incumbent. Kurt Schrader has represented the 5th District for almost 4 years now, after serving about 12 years in the Oregon Senate and House of Representatives. He also is from Canby. He has degrees from Cornell University and the University of Illinois. He was a farmer and veterinarian for more than 30 years before his election to Congress. And our fourth speaker will be Christina Lugo from Oregon City. She's the nominee of the Pacific Green Party and serves as the party secretary. She ran for the U.S. Senate while living in Tennessee some years ago, and for this office in 2010. She's the co-owner of a gardening service and has worked in the past as a print journalist and an independent radio and TV producer. So with that, I will turn it loose to the 4 candidates, starting with Fred Thompson.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here. This is my first time to speak to this group, and there's another first here too, but I want to tell a little bit about me, because you really don't know about me other than my somewhat famous name. 23 and a half years ago, I walked into a store, and I needed some shirts, and a very beautiful young lady, one of the most beautiful women I've ever met in my life, came up to me and said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Oh, yes, you can." A year later, we got married on her parents' 45th wedding anniversary. She's an only child. She just had graduated from the University of Oregon, but she wanted to go on to architecture school. So I said, go to architecture school. For 3 years, she went to architecture school. The second summer, studied in Rome, and she got her architecture degree. We moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and our first son was born there. I didn't want to raise my son in Atlanta, Georgia, so I took a lateral move and run a chemical division for a large company back here in Oregon. I love Oregon. She became an adjunct professor at the University of Oregon School of Architecture. Our second son was born. And then I said, honey, if you're going to be an architect professor, you should get a PhD. She said, I'd rather have a law degree. I said, well, go get a law degree. She said, well, you know I'm going to be 42 and I get a law degree. And I said, you're going to be 42 anyway, you might have a law degree. So she got her law degree, and she started her own practice, her solo practice. And she wrote a letter in one of these lawyer magazines. And the Department of Justice here in Oregon saw that she was not only a lawyer, but she had an architectural degree. So they asked her to come and join them. Hardy Myers offered her a job after doing his due diligence. And so today, my lovely wife is not only works for the Department of Justice, but she is the focal point of who I am. And there would not be a Fred Thompson without her. But she goes on beyond that. She volunteers with the Inns of Court, where she works with all the Chief Justices, which I believe they probably do a lot of tango dancing on my mind, but they work on legal issues. She also sings with the Willamette Master Chorus. But one of the most things I'm very, very proud of her is she's a chairperson of our church show ministry. And her and her ladies, they made it shawls, and they sent 73 of them to women Marines in Afghanistan. I'm a Vietnam vet. I served with the 101st Airborne, and I know what combat's like. And I am so grateful for her and her ladies, that those women today in Afghanistan are being protected with God's word. So with that, thank you for this opportunity to be here. God bless you and God bless America.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to be here today to represent the Constitutional Party and the Constitution of the United States. It's very humbling to stand here before all of you and to ask you for your support to restore the Constitution to its level that it should be. I'm sure many of you are concerned, as I am, over the issues that face us regarding our freedoms. First, let me give you a little background on myself. I'm 63 years old. I'm a double sovereign. That means I was born here in Oregon, in Hillsborough, as well as the United States. And I believe in sovereign rights. That's why I mentioned it. I don't think that we need to be spied on by our government, having dossiers and files collected upon us to be used at a later date. If you want to spy on all the students, illegal aliens, that's fine, but not on sovereigns. So I oppose that. I oppose several other things that the last couple of Congresses have done. I'm not a professional politician, I'm just a professional candidate. I ran for mayor in 72, I ran for state representative in 76 and 80. I even ran for the school board last year when they tried to put contraceptives in the school. So, my ideals and my concepts are based around some very important issues. One, the sanctity of life. The sanctity of life itself. The Constitutional Party stands on that principle as the number one and most important thing. The second is liberty. We need liberty. So give liberty a chance. Stand up, America, for what's right and what you know is right. For your families, for your children. Take back the rights that you once had. The third principle is that of family. That the family is sacred, and that parents have the right to the destiny of their children, not the state. We are not slaves to the state. The state is supposed to be servants to us. Somewhere along the line, we have lost our way. The Constitution is a sacred and hallowed, important document that we all need to live by and uphold. Other principles: limit government to local governments, and support and sustain sovereignty. I look forward to running this campaign, and I wish I had gotten off to a better start. I know that we have the issues and we have the principles that America stands for. Thank you very much.
It's great to be back. Great to be back. Hope to be back for that 2014 date also. We'll see how that goes. I'm Kurt Schrader. I'm your current congressman. Thank you for electing me twice now. I really enjoy representing this region. I believe this region is a microcosm of this great country, and that calls for reasonable, bipartisan, thoughtful representation. I like to think that's what I'm all about, based on what I hear from you. I've been a veterinarian for 35 years. Enjoy the profession a lot. Know what it's like to be at a payroll. Know what it's like to provide for other families, pay taxes. Started my own farm. It was going real good to my labor force went to college, but you learned a lot. You learned a lot about the difficulties of making a life and living off the land, whether it's in the timber or the ocean or farming here in the Willamette Valley. And I think that's important in someone you elect. They have to relate to you and your problems and the lifestyles that you're familiar with. That's really, I think, important. I believe in individual opportunity. I believe strongly in personal responsibility. I also believe in sense of community. I think those are the values we have as Oregonians, and particularly in the Valley and the Central Coast. I've been pleased with what I've been able to accomplish in the short 3 years, 3.5 years I've been in Congress. We were able to bring the NOAA fleet to the Central Oregon coast, a huge boost to the economy, lots of jobs. Had a lot to do with the Kubler interchange getting done, a lot of the improvements in the Mill Creek Industrial Park to create jobs and opportunity for Oregonians all around the valley right now. We were able to help our National Guard with the Polk County Armory get refurbished, so our wounded warriors who come home, defend our country, defend our freedoms, have a reasonable place to drill and reside at. And frankly, a lot of the work that my team does to make sure that seniors and veterans and homeowners get the assistance and benefits they actually need and deserve at the end of the day. And frankly, on the national level, I think we've been pretty amazing given the tough cards we've been dealt 4 years ago. We were able to avoid a huge depression. We've actually been able to have success in keeping our auto industry alive. I've had a little bit to do, well, more than a little bit to do with keeping our housing industry afloat in these very, very difficult times. And good news is we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Things are starting to improve a little bit. Got a long, long way to go. We've been able to rein in Wall Street so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Affordable, low-cost health care is coming down the pipe. We've got all the above energy policy. Our state and our country, I think, are now positioned to really break out of this horrible, tough recession and be top competitors around the world. Won't be China, won't be Brazil, won't be India. It's going to be the United States of America that's going to be the rest of the world's lunch at the end of the day. Thank you very, very much.
Good afternoon, Salem. My name is Christina Jean Lugo. I'm the Pacific Green Party candidate for U.S. House. I would like to acknowledge my partner, Beverly Thomas, who's here today, and thank her for coming. And I would also like to acknowledge our presidential candidate, Jill Stein, who is here in Oregon today campaigning for the Green Party nationally. I am here today because we are in a state of crisis on our planet, and the policies that we support at the national level are not going nearly far enough to address the real environmental crises which are facing us in the coming century. We're living in a time of increased global warming when we still have a fossil fuel addiction and a dependency on non-renewable natural resources to supply most of our energy. And it is a point of crisis, and we need to react strongly on a national, state, and local level in order to deal with the coming crisis which is facing us. There were national reports out today that you may have seen in the news that the global ice, that the North Pole ice pack is 40% reduced this year from where it was in historic levels, and it's also at the lowest level that it has been. The reason that all of this is significant is because it's going to affect our lives directly in a very radical way in the coming 30 years. It's going to be one of the defining issues for our children and for their children. And we need to really start thinking about it now. We need to start now promoting policies that support renewable energy. We need to invest in, we need to divest from the fossil fuel industry, which has dominated our economy for the last 50 years. And it's really gotten us into the hole that we're in right now. It's going to affect everything about our lives, and that's part of why the Green Party is here and we're running strong. I'm also here to promote the rights of women. I believe that women deserve to have their rights protected, and we have a very narrow Supreme Court right now which could take away those rights at any time. And I'm also here because I think that although the current administration has taken some good steps on health care, I think that we still need to look to our neighbors to the north and their single-payer model of health care delivery as the most effective way of delivering health care for our 40 million uninsured citizens. Thank you very much.
thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. The next part of our program involves 2 questions from the chair. And no matter how tough and mean the questions are, we're giving you a minute and a half to answer. Sorry about that. And I think each of you knows the order. The order changes in every one of these. I believe it's 2 of those. It's the first question. Okay, the first question is, how do you feel about the Bowles-Simpson bipartisan commission recommendations for reducing the deficit? What, if any, revenue increases do you favor? What, if any, expense reductions, and why?
I think that the most effective way to reduce the federal deficit is to stop investing so heavily in the military-industrial complex. We're spending almost $1 trillion a year in our national budget on the military. And this money is, I'm sorry for the crude analogy, but it's like we're throwing money down the hole. And it's at a time when we really can't afford to do that. I also think that we need to increase taxes on the wealthiest members of our society and on corporations. I believe that people who benefit the most from all of the wonderful riches that this country produces and that hardworking Americans produce for everyone should also pay the highest rates. I think that part of the reason that we've gotten so far in a hole is because we've really drifted away from the Eisenhower era of taxation, when we did tax corporations and the wealthy at much higher rates, and we had a much more balanced budget. And I know that that's controversial and uncomfortable for some people, but I think that's really the solution.
I'm a big fan of the Bowles-Simpson report. Bipartisan commission established by the President of the United States is actually the right template for getting us back on track as a nation and being competitive globally. There's a lot of rhetoric out there on both sides that I think is totally counterproductive. It's unfortunate that politics these days has become so extreme, so partisan. The rhetoric we use is divisive. When I was working here in Salem as a part-time citizen legislator, tried to find common ground, and that's been lost. Bowles-Simpson does that. It gets a long way down the road towards dealing with the toughest problems we have. The toughest problems we have in America right now is the growing number of seniors. The Medicare population is growing astronomically. I actually do a presentation around the district pointing out it's not anyone's fault, it's just a demographic fact. We have to make some reforms to make sure Medicare is going to be around for the next generation. If we give people checks and vouchers, but there's other ways to go about it. Bowles-Simpson lines that out. Rather than argue over taxes, why don't we do tax reform? That's something Oregon has done very well. I remember Bob Packwood, 1986, coming up with a very good program. What we need to do now is frankly get rid of all these loopholes that advantage different people, distort market. Frankly, it's not good. And we can lower people's tax rates and actually put some money on the table, real revenue, to help us build this nation. So I think Bowles-Simpson is indeed the way to go. It's a bipartisan initiative, and I'm working hard with the Go Big Coalition.
Well, I think it's a good policy based on the way that it's laid out. The trouble is how do you act upon that? And that's not happening in Washington, D.C. because we just have people that are not working together. Now, I really don't care what party you belong to or what color your skin is or where you come from. But if we're going to solve the problems here in the United States and here in Oregon, we need to come together and work on the opportunities that all of us can solve these problems. Now, tax reform, absolutely, we've got to have tax reform, but we also have to look at the opportunities that we have to grow the economy. So there is more revenue to take care of Medicare. There is more revenue to take care of our senior citizens. There is more revenue for our schools. But what we've done, we constricted the way this economy grows based on over-regulation. So that's what I see in Washington, D.C., is that they look at one particular thing and say, this is what we need to do, but they don't look at all the overall, what has to happen in order to make the system work better. And I think that we really collectively need to get people in Congress that are willing to work together, regardless of where you come from. and what battles you've had in the past to really solve these problems that we have.
Okay. I don't know really that much about that bill because I haven't really studied it. But I will say that I believe there are some things that we can do that will take off some of the pressure. For one thing, yes, we do need tax reform. We need to reform the international corporations that are making so much money off of this country and taking it out of this country. And that's why I believe that we need some kind of a tariff or a tax on goods that are coming in here from corporations that are outsizing the work and allowing our people to go unemployed. Also, we need to stop oil subsidies for the oil companies and tax these companies because this oil belongs to all of us, and they need to make a profit, that's true, but not in the form of backstabbing the rest of us. I also believe that we need a balanced budget, and that way we'll have something that we can actually work with that's going to hold us together. The other thing is we have a lot of people that are unemployed. I wouldn't be against something like a WPA where people can go down and get a job for a day, get a job for a few days, and start building this country back up. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, and you have a different order, and I think you all know which order you're in. If you don't, I can look it up. What Oregon issues should be addressed by federal legislation? What changes do you support?
Well, all right, I'll answer that. For one thing, Oregon has a great deal of social agencies, a great deal of social control. It takes control away from the families. It takes control away from the parents. I would introduce legislation to remove certain portions in the Social Security law that allows for elected officials of the state of Oregon to look into the Department of Human Resources and the Department of Children Protective Services and put an end to the kidnapping of children from families and allow a better system than what they have by allowing the legislators to go in and look at the records. So that's one thing that I would do. Another thing that I would do for the people of Oregon is I would support the issues of the importance of life, the sanctity of life, and the sanctity of the family. And they need to be protected because they've been under attack for a long time. Our values, well, you all know that they need to be raised. Our media needs to be raised. Our children are getting garbage. Sure, they're getting some good stuff, but they're getting a lot of garbage too. So we need to take care of our children. Thank you.
Here in Oregon, we're a natural resource state. Just like Ohio has corn and Nevada has Las Vegas, we have trees. And for the federal government to own 55% of our timberland is absolutely wrong. That belongs to the people of Oregon. And I believe that the federal government needs to be removed out of our timberland and allow the ownership of that to go to the counties. Allow the local control so they can provide for their own schools, for their own roads, like we used to when I came to Oregon in the early 70s. So I think the federal government needs to focus in on what the federal government is supposed to focus in on, which is securing our borders. In the history of mankind, any country that failed to protect its borders will cease to exist. I've worked around the world. We're the only country in the world that does not protect its borders. I'm for immigration, but legal immigration. That's how my forefathers did it. I think the federal government needs to focus in on the Constitution, allow the states to control their own destiny, to create wealth and opportunity here for the local people. We have mining, we have fisheries, we have all the natural resources here to solve our own problems. The federal government needs to recognize that and be responsible and respectful to the state of Oregon, allow the people to have their jobs.
government should be a partner for our state and local governance structures. I think that's really, really important. The federal government can play a key role in our natural resource industry. I agree with my opponent. And actually, we're doing something about it. As many of you know, I've sponsored a bill regarding Oregon and California railroad lands, BLM lands, to put them back into some sort of production and end the timber wars in this great state. Working with Peter DeFazio, working with Greg Walton, that bipartisanship. We're pushing very hard. We're working with the governor's office. Just got off the phone before coming in here, talking with the governor about how he's going to be approaching this. I mean, that's the type of partnership that needs to happen. We need to preserve our treasures, strike the balance between the environment, and healthy forests, and also the health of the local communities. Rural America, rural Oregon is hurting. Some of these counties of ours, we might not even be here if we don't act. So I've been in the forefront of trying to make sure our federal government recognizes our unique challenges here. We also, I think, have an opportunity at the federal level to support education, make sure that our kids get that great education, talk about reducing tuition, keeping Pell Grants in play. The federal government plays a very key role making sure our kids are competitive going forward. Trade, we passed after many, many years a fair trade agreement, particularly with Korea, that's going to put America, and Oregon in particular, in a very big competitive advantage to export our manufacturers and stuff to other countries. We need partnerships with the federal government, transportation, healthcare, natural resources, education, and I think that's what I've been able to do so far, and I'll continue to do that if you let me.
For me, as the Green Party person, the forest is something very sacred. It's a living system. And so I see the forest as something that has been greatly compromised. Obviously, as an environmentalist, I believe that the federal government plays a key role in protecting the forest. Unfortunately, we have destroyed so much of the equilibrium in the forest, of the ecology of it, that it's going to take hundreds of years for the forests to recover. And honestly, the kind of policy that we have right now in Oregon towards timber and towards timber means that we're going to continue to devastate our most precious natural resource, which is our forest. We can easily get the same amount of paper and the same kinds of resources with industrial hemp. This is clear, this has been proven, it's been written about and researched, and it's a great industry. We can also create more jobs in Oregon by investing in wind and renewable resources. If we invest in a Green New Deal for America, including a Green New Deal for Oregon, we will not only create a whole new industry and a whole new workforce with good jobs, but we'll also be doing our part to minimize the impact of what we're having right now in the future, environmentally.
We're going to invite our candidates to make a closing statement in the formal part here in just a minute or so. But before we do that, we might ask all of you to start thinking about the audience question period. As you'll recall, it's our practice to give preference to City Club dues-paying members for questions. Others only if there's time. We also will request questions, not speeches. The guiding principle is if you want to get a speech, you ought to run for Congress. In any event, we'll ask our four candidates at this time to make some closing remarks. Beginning, I believe, with Ms. Rubin.
Sorry, I thought we were still in questions. So our Green Party presidential candidate is here in Oregon this weekend, and she's here to talk about the Green New Deal. And I support, as a candidate, I support an adoption of the Green New Deal. I think that we have so many issues that are really facing us in the next 4 years, and we really need to start thinking differently. We need to stop thinking along the lines of just the two-party system, either voting for Democrat or Republican. And I think that we need to expand how we choose to do things, because we're really in a state of crisis on so many levels. We're in a state of crisis environmentally, we're in a state of crisis economically. And these two are interrelated. I think that we need to forgive student debt. I think this is absolutely fundamental. Part of the reason that you've seen so many people pitching tents in cities all across America last year is because of the issue of student debt. It's become a crippling force in this country, and it's going to affect us